What's up, IDP Army? It's your man, Jordan Rains, back again, 2 nights in a row if you happen to be on last night. We're, IDP Army podcast, as you know, mostly IDP, all fantasy football. If it's your first time checking out the channel or the podcast, I appreciate it. Please subscribe, follow, give a thumbs up if you're on YouTube. We would appreciate that. Leave a comment. We love interacting with the audience. We're on YouTube, Spotify, Stitcher, blah, blah, blah. You know all that. Like I said, 5-star review and rating would be awesome. But if you don't leave one. It's not the end of the world. I'll be all right. Be sure to go check out the IDP Army Patreon, patreon.com/the IDP Army. Officially joining the IDP Army. We want you in our Discord community. We want you guys to get access to all the cool stuff we have back there, which will be hard launching. Or I don't know what the right word for that is, but soon, 4/1. Its soft launch was like January 1st. There's only a handful of people that are really in there, but when all the content is going to be dumped on there is 4/1. So be on the lookout for that. And yeah, tonight, this evening, whenever you're watching this, we're going to be talking 2021 Dynasty Linebacker strategy theory for the 2021 season. And tonight with me, I'm joined by Jon Macri, writer for PFF and host of the Big Nickel podcast. What is up, John?
How's it going, Jordan? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure, man. Happy to have you back on. We talked about linebackers. I mean, it's been almost right around 2 months now ago. It doesn't seem like it's that long ago, but time has kind of been flying. We broke down the guys who finished the season now, kind of broke down the top 12. So I figured, hey, bring you back on as we kind of start looking forward early. This is kind of pre-draft stuff and, kind of look at the linebacker landscape, how you're approaching the position after you've had a couple of weeks to dig into the information, what you're seeing. And yeah, I just thought it would be good to just continue that conversation that we had. So I appreciate you coming back on.
Yeah, sounds good. I'm always happy to talk IDP and linebackers, especially. Love the position, and there's some good ones out there. And obviously, yeah, like you said, with free agency and everything like that going on, we got some big names signing, some smaller names too, but it's all going to be probably IDP relevant in some way. So.
Yeah, they might be big names this time next year. What's up, Chase? Thanks for tuning in, my man. Guys, make sure you're joining the circle over there. I got some fantasy content on the channel. Are you guys gay? Ooh, not me, John.
No, I'm not right now. Anyways,
sorry, Ollie. Hey, if you guys aren't watching on YouTube, it's already lit in here. So Matt Milano, let's just start right there. He re-signed with the Bills, 4 years, $44 million. He didn't really come into the free agency conversation. They locked him down. What were your thoughts on that? Him going back there?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's a good fit for him. He works well kind of beside Tremaine Edmunds. Tremaine Edmunds he's going to be the LB1 there, right? He's the guy that, gets most of the tackles while Milano can kind of play that coverage linebacker role a little bit. And he's free to rush the passer a little bit as well. And he's done that pretty good. And yeah, I mean, I like the fit. It was always kind of hard to picture him anywhere other than Buffalo. He fits that scheme and that team so well. So I think it's going to be he'll be a good player for IDP for a few more years at least. And I think he'll still be a good value too. He's, everybody kind of wants Tremaine Edmunds. Obviously he's the young, big name there, but I think Milano can be, he'll probably be slightly less efficient as an IDP than Edmunds, but he can outproduce him on any given week as well. So he's a good value in most drafts from what I've found. So I'm a big fan of Milano, and I like him staying in Buffalo.
Yeah, totally agree. It's funny. Tremaine Edmunds, like you said, he's always the guy who gets the love, and rightly so. But Milano, that I hate that takes away from Milano. We forget he had a number one overall week this past season. I don't know if Tremaine Edmunds has ever had one of those in his career. So it kind of shows you even though Matt Milano might not be the name a lot of people know in Buffalo, it gets a lot of attention. The upside definitely exists for him. I love him going back to that system. Just, I like continuity from year to year, especially on defensive players and the players around them. So love that. We had some, big free agency stuff today. Obviously, Shaq Barrett, speaking of consistency and continuity, he goes back to Tampa Bay on a 4-year, what was that, a $72 million, I believe, deal?
Yeah, I can't remember the numbers, but yeah, it was a nice deal for him for sure. But yeah, like you said, the consistency is huge, right? Staying on the same team is always kind of nice for IDP. You kind of know what you're getting already. He kind of has that role set in on the defense as a starting edge rusher. And he's been really good the last couple of years, right? So he had obviously the big sack season in 2019, and then he followed it up this year by being just as good, maybe not as much in the box score, but he was still a dominant edge rusher. put up a lot of pressures and was affecting the quarterback, working opposite JPP as well. So yeah, it's nice to have these guys re-sign. I always like it, and there's quite a few of them. So
yeah, like you said, I'd love to see the continuity. They've already brought back several of those guys. Devin White, we already know he's back. Winfield's young, he's staying there. Sue, I haven't heard anything about Sue. I'm still a little bit up in the air. I would like to see him come back as that interior guy to Vita Vea. They did fine without Vita Vea, but I don't know if they'll do fine without Sue. You could see a little drop off there, but I'm sure we'll hear something the next day or two. And the way he plays, he's played mercenary football for a while now. He'll probably stay. They'll figure something out. That's kind of my thought. So I love him going back there. Love the continuity. We had some other big signings today. Matt Judon went to the Patriots. Any strong feelings about that one?
Not really, to be honest. It's one of those ones. It's just kind of like, okay, I think he was okay in Baltimore. I think they were a pass rush needy team. They didn't really have those big stars on the edge. I mean, they had Terrell Suggs for a few years, but they're running out Matt Judon. They put out Ngakoue this year. He was playing, but they're good, not like great edge rushers. And I think being in New England too, in the Belichick scheme, he likes to rotate these guys, right? So it's hard to get an every down role in New England. So he's again probably going to be playing more third down, passing down role. He's going to need to be obviously extremely efficient if he's going to be a great IDP kind of thing. But he might work out. Chase Winovich is a guy that's been there too for a couple of years now, and he's had his games here and there. But I think that kind of tells you a little bit of I would say they're in a similar, potentially similar role in New England. They can be swapping in and out in New England with Belichick. So yeah, it's fine. I don't love it. I don't hate it, kind of thing.
Yeah, that's kind of my thought. It'll be interesting to see if his tag changes or designation changes with the move at all. With Sleeper, I don't know about the other platforms what they do. I know he's already an edge on ESPN, so that wouldn't even be an issue. But yeah, he got a 4-year, $56 million. That's not bad. $32 million over the first 2 years. I'm honestly shocked that Bud Dupree has not yet been signed. He, to me, was the number 2 guy behind Barrett, in my opinion, in the free agency. And then I had Yannick, and Yannick went to the Raiders. But any thoughts on Yannick or Bud Dupree before we kind of keep scooting along?
Yeah, Yannick. Yannick's a guy. He's another guy. Like he's a pass rush specialist, right? He doesn't really play those early down roles. He's not a great run defender, but we're usually drafting him in IDP because he can get sacks, and I think he's a better edge rusher than Cleveland Farrell. And I think there's a good possibility on those passing downs that him and Max Crosby can be the starters there. So it's not a bad spot for Ngakoue. I like it. It kind of hurts Cleveland Farrell's value even more. Not that it was super high to begin with, but yeah, I think it's kind of showing a little bit, that they made that mistake at pick 4 a couple of years ago. So maybe Ngakoue can be the pass rush that they need. And then who was the other?
Bud Dupree. Just kind of, it's curious to me that he wasn't. To me, he was he would have been the second free agent pass rusher. So I'm kind of surprised he's still on the market.
Yeah, he's a good.
Go ahead.
Oh no, I was just gonna say he's a good player, and I saw a thing that Tennessee might be interested in him.
I would love that. Titans, I would love that.
Yeah, they need it too, right? And he kind of fits that scheme as like a stand-up linebacker on the line, and if they need him to drop into coverage, like they've been using Harold Landry as well. So that would be interesting.
Yeah, I think the two of them would feed off each other, similar to, obviously neither of them are TJ Watt level, but they're both, in their own right, very capable players. So other big one, Rams safety John Johnson signed with the Browns. That's kind of the other big kind of free agency IDP relevant one. John Johnson, anybody who's played IDP knows he was a top 10 safety 2 years in a row, 2 years ago. This year he dropped off a little bit in his production overall, but still played all 16 games. Last year, actually, I should check myself. Last year, he missed the end of the season. He was still, when he played, he was one of the top defensive backs. But the 2 years previous to that, he was a top safety or defensive back in IDP top 10. So I like this move to the Browns. They've kind of had issues with safety. They brought in, I hate it for Ronnie Harrison because I've been like getting higher on Ronnie Harrison for a while, and he's a playmaker. You know, even though he seems to get hurt a lot when he's on the field, Ronnie Harrison just always seems to be just like doing crazy ass shit. So I'm a little bit more worried about Grant Delpit in this situation, just because, you know, maybe they're a little concerned with his injury. Maybe he won't be back right at the start of the season. I don't know. You could never have enough good safeties, I will say. And that's, you know, so, but any thoughts on him? Are you moving him up, down? Do you think, you know, what do you think about this last year too? I saw somebody today on Twitter talking about him being kind of like a late round steal defensive back. And in my head, I'm like, yeah, I still got him up there. I mean, if he's scooting past 10, I mean, that's kind of negligence, I feel like, just because we know the upside has happened there with him.
Yeah.
But what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree. I think he's still a great IDP option at safety. I mean, the Browns, they run a little bit of more of a too high scheme. They can have somebody down playing in the box. It'll be a question of who that is, I guess. But John Johnson obviously can play both those roles. He can play deep. He can play in the box. Same thing with Ronnie Harrison, right? So, yeah, like you said, the Delpit thing is the bigger interest. Maybe they bring him on a little bit slower and let Harrison kind of get in there at the beginning of the season and then see how things kind of go. But I think John Johnson's locked in as a starter there at safety, and he's a great player too. He was, I think, the only defensive back in the league last year that was actually calling the plays for the defense, wearing the green dot and actually, you know, playing that middle linebacker role almost and getting the defense set and getting the calls out there. So he's a great player, great ad. As a Browns fan, I'm really happy to have him too. So
yeah, I said something. What did I say? I think I might have said it last night to Ian. I was like, show me a team with a good safety. And I was like, and I'll show you a team with a good defense. And you could say the exception being Jamal Adams, because he's a great safety, but he's not like other great safeties. Like he's like special. Like, he doesn't do the other stuff some of the great safeties do.
Yeah, he is different. He's especially the way that Seattle utilizes him, right? Like he's their top pass rusher basically. So
he's such a beast. I wouldn't be he's just unreal. This, you know, maybe he's not great in coverage, but even that, I mean, he's still an NFL safety. Like he's beat some people before. But I love him so much. Anyway, the other small signings, we had Leonard Floyd going back to the Rams. Good for him. What do you have? 11 sacks this last year, I believe, 11 or 12. So that's big for him. The consistency of playing next to Aaron Donald. Let's see, here it is. He had 10.5, so that's not bad. He was a top 10 sack guy. Had more than JPP, more than Brian Burns, more than Montez Sweat, Khalil Mack. So you'd like to see the consistency again. That's what we were talking about. Kind of wish that would have happened last year for old Dante Fowler.
Right.
And then I don't know if there's any other big defensive player news the rest of the day. We had, you know, Carlos Hyde ended up getting signed.
Mm-hmm. Romeo Okwara re-signed with the Lions, it seems.
Yep. Sorry. Yep, that did happen.
Yeah, so which is good. Another one that you want the consistency for because he's kind of that 1-year guy. So you don't want to see him move to a new scheme and, you know, have that production disappear altogether. So kind of nice to have that, knowing he's back in Detroit.
Nice. All right. Well, since we've come on to this show, Bud Dupree has in fact signed with the Titans.
Ooh,
$16.5 million a year for Bud Dupree. I don't see any more details than that right now per Ian Rappaport, but there we go. I like that. I love that. He's there. Yep. He'll be their top pass rusher now.
Oh yeah. I think he's the better player than Landry. I mean, Landry's fine. But fine. Bud Dupree. Hey.
He's fine. That's exactly what
he is. He's a volume guy, right? Like he's out there. He played like every single snap last year, it seemed like. But
where's he at? Good. Number 10 overall, baby.
Yeah, there he is.
Getting that work.
Yeah, you know, and I think it came from him just being like on the field like constantly, right? They were able to get him to drop into coverage, so he was able to get some tackles there. But yeah, like sack wise,
it's funny. Well, you know what you're mentioning. I mean, he and JJ Watt back to back. I think between the two of them, they combined for 9 sacks. But here they are in the top 10 at defensive line. So yeah, they were the only two edge rushers, I believe, to play over 1,000 snaps in the regular season last year. So that's, I mean, if you're getting that, you're going to get production to follow, right? So that's kind of nice for sure. Just imagine if when I look at that, I mean, I'm always extrapolating out, but I feel like Landry had a little bit more juice than that. So I look at that and I'm like, man, what if he would have just got 7 sacks? You know, he could have catapulted himself up there into, you know, big dog status. He would have been a top I mean, he would have been right there with Aaron Donald. So, you know, things he would have had 9. He had 9 the year before on a little less snaps. So, I mean, it's in his range of outcomes. And now it's Bud Dupree. I mean, he's had nobody across from him. I mean, he has been the lead pass rusher. So, you know, I feel like he's kind of gotten not a great shake from the IDP community. I've always kind of been like, you know, I know Harold Landry plays a lot of snaps, doesn't do a lot, but I mean, he does enough. You know, hate the guy.
Yeah,
so,
I mean, I'm not saying he's bad. He's not a bad player.
Why do you hate him, John? No, I'm not talking about you. I hear people say these things, you know, I'm sure you hear it too. So,
yeah, for sure.
All right. Well,
that'll be good.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I love it. He'll lead the team in sacks. I wouldn't be. Yeah. That's, I mean, or maybe he won't. I don't know. Who knows? We don't know anything. All right. Let's see. Justin Simmons tagged, Levante David tagged, Marcus May tagged. I do quickly want to say, Jordan Poyer posted something on his Twitter or on his Instagram the other day, just about how he's recovering from alcoholism and how he didn't really realize that he had been an alcoholic. That was something he struggled with. I just, you know, shout out to him for bringing that to light. You know, if anybody's listening or out there, I mean, this, you know, it's real stuff. You know, he's like he said he went to a few AA meetings. He said, you know, my life, I might have problems, like, but I listened, you know, and other people have bigger problems than me. And he said it was really just, you know, it's the mental part. The first part was just admitting, like, this is my problem. Like, you know, I am like these people, but maybe it's different. But just, you know, that whole rant there was basically to say, you know, addiction's real. I mean, people struggle, people with tons of money, people poor as shit, people just living regular ass lives, you know, in line to pick up their kids at school, people in the grocery store. So be empathetic. And if you you do have a problem, that's not a problem. I mean, it's nothing to be ashamed of. That, I mean, it is a problem. First, you have to admit that, but there are people out there like you that are willing to help you. And so I really like that he put that on his Instagram. You know, he's only 28 years old, and just to say, like, I was an alcoholic, like, that's big. That takes a level of self-awareness. And, you know, I just want people to know that, you know, there's no shame in it. So I put that in my notes yesterday. I forgot to bring it up. I just wanted to quickly bring it up because, I mean, I have had my, you know, struggles in life with addiction. So I definitely understand it. And, you know, it's not easy, and it's not something people talk about enough, in my opinion, because it's very real and it's very present. So anyway, there's my TED Talk for society for today. So let's talk about linebackers. The main event, we're going to talk some linebacker strategy, theory, you know, whatever you want to call it. Jordan is drinking, bro. I just got some water, man. So the first question I want to talk to you about was, who is the Dynasty linebacker 1 right now? Is that Devin White? Is that Darius Leonard, Roquan Smith, or is that somebody else for you?
Well, so it's funny. I putting my Dynasty rankings together like the last week or so. I mean, longer than that, but they're finally kind of finalized and coming out this week. And I couldn't come off Devin White as LB1. Yeah, he's gonna be LB1 for me. I mean, look, it's hard for these guys to repeat LB1 season, so it's not to say that he's gonna finish maybe necessarily in that spot. But you know what? From everything that we've seen from him, he's a great pass rusher. He's on the field constantly. He gets tackles. He's constantly around the ball. As much as I like Darius Leonard, I gotta go Devin White. I just think with that upside that he brought and showed this year, he's going to be LB1 for me.
I love it. I am. I'm not with you, unfortunately. I'm still on Darius Leonard as my linebacker 1, and I did definitely struggle with this just personally because it's so Because, well, for one, early in the season, Darius Leonard was just like not present. So it's very easy in fantasy. Like that was when it mattered the most early on. That's kind of why Jabril Peppers, I still feel like, even though he had an incredible season, people are like, Jabril Peppers is just okay. And I'm like, bro, like, come on, stop. Like, he's not just okay. He's fucking amazing. But I did a writing piece on Dynasty Nerds with John Glosser, and he was on the side of Devin White as his Dynasty linebacker 1. I'm on the side of Darius Leonard as my linebacker 1. You guys can go check that out if you want. I'm sure he probably has a lot of the same points as you do, but there's definitely a rock solid case for both of these players. You know, again, the continuity that we speak of, you know, Devin White, Darius Leonard, you know, a true game changing middle linebacker. You know, even though people want to talk about linebackers and strong safeties like they're running backs and they're totally replaceable, teams with good ones, like really, really good ones, they are more than just that on the field, if that makes sense. So that's why Jamal Adams, to me, it's like you can't put him in the same box as you put other safeties. Darius Leonard and Devin White are in that same mold, and Levante David as well. I know you're a huge fan of him. These guys are just, they're not just middle of the field linebackers.
Right.
For me, ultimately, though, the reason I landed on Darius Leonard was just because we've seen 3 years of high level production from him. Extremely high level production from him. He ended the season in 2018 with 404 points, which is insane.
Yeah. Right.
In IDP 1-2-3 scoring, I know that and that was in 15 games. So when you look at that, and then you still look at what Devin White did this year in 15 games, it's still a little less than that. So his ceiling for me is just a little bit higher, and he's done it 3 years in a row. Now, the flip side of that is he has missed some games. So you're always going to have to bake that into the year where you're like, I'm projecting Darius Leonard for probably closer to 14 games than 16 games, if I'm honest with myself, just based on history. But I think you can go either way.
Oh, yeah.
And they're only a year apart in age. It feels like Darius Leonard's 1,000 years old because he's just been amazing for 3 years straight. I don't want to say we have fatigue over him. I really don't want that to happen to him. But I'm on the side of Darius Leonard as 1. You have Devin White as 1. I mean, there's nothing wrong with being 2 for either of these guys at all, in my opinion. So.
Yeah. If you could easily call them 1A, right? I think those are your two choices if you're picking linebacker first, then those are one of the guys you're going with. And I went back and forth on it, and I was just like, I wanted to deviate from the rest of the crowd so much. And I was like, I don't know, man. I loved what I saw from Devin White this year. And I do love Darius Leonard too. So it's just like, it's a toss up. You flip a coin and you're getting a great linebacker. So
yeah, I'm happy. And at this point, I'm like, I want one of them on my team. Like this year, I'm not messing around with linebacker, which we'll get to here shortly when we get more into the strategy. But that was a good discussion, So John's on Devin White. I got Darius Leonard. There's no wrong answer. I put Roquan Smith in there. And even some of these guys that play in these tackle-heavy leagues, whatever that means, you got Zach Cunningham, who outperformed both these guys. So, maybe I didn't put his name in there because, Zach Cunningham is not made of the same stuff that these guys are. But depending on your league, you could make a point because I think I heard, I know in 1 or 2 of my leagues, he did finish as the overall linebacker because he had 111 or something solos. It was just a ridiculous number of solo tackles. Yeah. Last year, only one person broke 100, and I think he hit 106. It was Buda Baker. So for him on his limited snap count too, he'll put 800 snaps. He was just boom, boom, boom.
Yeah, he's an efficient linebacker, that's for sure. And he misses tackles, but he makes a ton. So
yeah, well, that's the only thing you do, and
that's it. Yeah, that's basically it.
You gotta mess up every once in a while. All right, let's scoot on down to how are you approaching the linebacker position in 2021 in Dynasty startups? So I had a couple of little bullet points here, but I was kind of read them off. Who are you targeting? Who do you want to leave your draft and startup as your linebacker 1?
Yeah, so for Dynasty startups, it's a little tougher, right? Because I've only had the 1 startup so far this year at this point, and Devin White came off the board in the 5th round. So at that point, I'm still building an offense, so it was a little early for me. And then obviously once 1 comes off the board, then guys start coming off a little bit quicker. And I don't like to jump in too early because I know that there's pretty good depth at the position. But for me, the one guy that I'm targeting that I really like is Isaiah Simmons. I think trying to get him at a value right now while Devondre Campbell is still a free agent and still could potentially sign somewhere else, while Isaiah Simmons' role is not locked in yet for 2021. But I think if it is, I think he can bring that kind of upside that you get from a Devin White as a pass rusher, as a player that can make a lot of tackles and be out on the field constantly and doing a lot of things and make that kind of year 2 leap, especially in Dynasty. He's a young player. So those are the guys that I'm looking for. I'm looking for kind of those 2nd, maybe 3rd year guys that I think are at a decent value. And I know we're going to talk about that later, so I don't want to go over it too much. But Isaiah Simmons was who I came away with as my LB1. I missed out on Devin White and Darius Leonard. I think I will keep probably missing just because of how early they'll go. But Roquan Smith would be a really nice one. Even Tremaine Edmonds. I mean, he's fine he's fine. I keep saying he's fine. I shouldn't
fine.
be so,
There's
so
nothing wrong with
these
that.
guys, but he's a good linebacker, and he's super young, so he would be a guy of interest as well, right? So these guys that are still in their rookie contracts in NFL terms are guys that I like to kind of target in dynasty startups.
Yeah, love that. Where are you trying to get Isaiah Simmons? Like, what round are you kind of like, okay, I'm there, like it's time to make the jump, like if I want him as my one?
Yeah, so I want to say it was. I gotta try to pull it up to remember exactly what round it was, but that it was at the point where when we drafted him, I just felt like I couldn't let him go any further. It was probably around 7 or 8 or so.
Okay,
A few linebackers.
still single digit rounds.
Yeah. He right now he's going to be my dynasty linebacker 6. Spoilers for if we talk about that later. But
I love that.
I'm high on Isaiah Simmons. I love the guy.
That.
Yeah, I think I know it's maybe a little spicy, but I like the upside. I think if he gets in that role in that defense, I think he'll be a big time playmaker.
Yeah, he's gonna be a monster. I'm kind of in my drafts right now. The guys I'm trying to target, Roquan Smith, like you said, because you can get him like as the third-ish linebacker usually, and that can be 2 rounds maybe after Leonard and White, depending on how things are going, which I like that a lot. You're getting value with him because he's going to finish as a linebacker 1 if he plays. Points per game are great. If I'm waiting a little bit longer, I am 100% targeting Blake Martinez or Joe Schobert. Those are my like backup. They're maybe not super young, but I know and I've seen what they produce year in and year out. And to me, they're both kind of majorly underappreciated linebackers just because people talk about them like they aren't really, dynamic playmakers. But I mean, Joe Schobert has had like 19, 25, 17, and 23 impact plays the last few years. I mean, those are all plays that are not tackles or quarterback hits. That's a lot, especially when a guy like Zach Cunningham can barely get over double digits, but he's out there getting massive tackles. So I like guys that have, diverse skill sets. Even Blake Martinez, 21 impact plays this year, 14, 18, and then 25. So he can push up there into that kind of elite, semi-elite. I really would call it elite. I mean, the super elite guys at the end of every year, like we're looking at right now, Darius Leonard or Devin White had 30 and Roquan Smith had 33 last year. So that kind of tells you if you can push up into that mid to high 20s, you're getting into that elite territory. That's just something some guys are not going to be able to do just based on their skill set. So they're a little older and kind of like looked down upon, but they are very capable guys. So they're kind of guys I target if I missed out on like the younger studs.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. Who are some guys that you're kind of avoiding in the first, like your top 24 to 20, the 30 picks at linebacker, like guys that you're just like, I'm okay missing him / like we can go 10 more rounds and I'm just like not going to touch him. Like, I just don't want that.
Yeah. I mean, it's more, I think for like avoiding guys, like I just don't like to reach too much. Like if there's good value on the board at a different position, like just because linebackers are falling quickly, if you can get like a top 10 defensive lineman as opposed to getting like a top, 15 to 20 linebackers, say, that's kind of where I'm just trying to avoid certain guys. But specifically, maybe somebody like a Leighton Vander Esch, maybe somebody who's got some question marks around like health, specifically like his neck. I mean, it's kind of a scary thing, right? I'm not drafting any Leighton Vander Esch. I especially in Dynasty, I worry about, how long can a career last too if you're having those kind of neck injuries. I know he's a big name. He's a first round linebacker in NFL terms, plays on the Cowboys, so he gets a lot of spotlight, but he's a guy that I would probably be looking to avoid. Even somebody like, I was trying to avoid Jerome Baker before. Now even more so with McKinney there. I think Jerome Baker, as nice of some games that he had last season were, I think that McKinney will eat into that. And honestly, I thought the Dolphins were going to end up drafting a linebacker to combat with his snaps as well. So he's another guy that I'm not overly interested in at the moment.
Yeah, I agree with both of those. They're kind of, especially, Baker, he rushed the passer a lot. What do you have, 7 sacks? I mean, without those 7 sacks, I mean, he's nothing. He's complete and total dust for IDP. What do you get, like 100 tackles or something? I mean, honestly, 100 tackles is not a great threshold, in my opinion. If you want to even get into linebacker 2 numbers, you got to put up some big plays behind that kind of stuff. Guys, I'm avoiding personally Miles Jack. I know he had a good year this last year, good air quotes. But, when you dig a little deeper and you look into the impact plays, which again, if you guys listen to this channel, you guys know impact plays are anything that's not a tackle or a quarterback hit, basically. He's only had 16, 9, 10, and 13. Those are not great numbers. And for a guy that's going over 1,000 snaps, I mean, that's just not what you're looking for, in my opinion. Did he get the tackles? Yeah. Did he play every game this season? Yeah. But the points are there and were there this year. But if things don't fall, I don't know if he has the upside that some of these other guys have, especially if he can't get behind the line of scrimmage or he's not batting more balls down or getting interceptions. So he's a guy that I'm avoiding. And there's one other guy I was gonna say that I was avoiding. It is probably Zach Cunningham for me, just because I'm just not a big, and I say that I have Zach Cunningham on a lot of teams, but I don't like drafting him because, again, when I watch football, I want to feel something. I mean, let's just be real. Like, that's why I draft Tyreek Hill. That's why you draft Devontae Adams. You want the big play. You want the touchdown. That's, Zach Cunningham, great. He got me 20 points. I would much rather get 20 points from a guy who gets like a sack, 2 tackles for loss, and an interception, and like a tackle, than get 20 points for a guy that's getting 10 solo tackles. Like, that's just like, okay, like that's death by 1,000 cuts. You know what I mean? And that's fine. There's a place for that in your team building. That's not how I like to build my team. I like to get guys like that a little bit later. That's kind of what Leighton Vander Esch is too. You'd be surprised at the impact plays he's had. It's not what you think. He's much more of a tackle guy. He's actually very similar to Cunningham in that regard of what his production profile looks like. Those are guys I'm avoiding there. And, speaking of impact plays, Patrick Queen is a guy that I'm okay reaching for too a little bit this year. Just because he and Devin Bush to me are 2 players that are not top 10 right now, kind of being taken, but I think both of them have a very good chance to finish as top 10 linebackers in IDP. And they're both so young. If you can get a linebacker one season or top 3 linebacker season out of them now, you could flip them or you can be sitting pretty, so, and they're not going to cost you top 8, top 6 linebacker cost right now. And they're younger than a lot of those guys that are up there. So they're guys I think could have a chance to make a big push this next year.
Yeah, I think that's a good call. I mean, yes, Devin Bush, like guys like that kind of miss like big chunks of the year. Like people forget about them, right? But he's locked in as a linebacker 1 in Pittsburgh. He's not going anywhere. He's still a young player. If you can get him at a value just because he was hurt last year, that's a huge steal. Miles Jack, I'm with you. I think he has this perception about him that he's this great linebacker. I don't know what it is. Maybe just coming out of UCLA, he was a 2nd-round pick, and he's like a top 5 paid linebacker as well.
Yeah.
So I think that kind of plays into it a little bit. But I'm just like, I don't see it. He's not.
There's nothing to see. You're not missing it. You're not missing it.
Yeah, it's just he's fine. Like he's a linebacker. He does what he's supposed to do, but he doesn't do anything spectacular. He usually plays second fiddle on his team, right? Whether it's between Telvin Smith being out there or Joe Schobert now, right? So he's kind of the LB2 on his own team, even though he's drafted as like this high end kind of LB2.
Yeah, I think that might be more in our heads this time of year because I think the reason people are kind of high on him is because if you remember looking back to last year, you got Miles Jack he was drafted mostly as like a linebacker 3. Like nobody wanted him because we already know he's inefficient. Nobody really likes him. I mean, we can act like we like him, but nobody really likes him because, again, he's boring. Like you don't say like, oh, there was that one big emotional moment where Miles Jack like made me feel something. That just doesn't exist. He's another, but he did actually have one game I think this year we had like an interception. But anyway, that was like the one game.
He had like a big week 1 or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. So for me, he's a little bit overvalued right now, especially thinking you got him as like a linebacker 3 last year. I'm not paying up for him, which the next question I had was who's overvalued, undervalued, but we've kind of touched on that a little bit, I feel. I think we kind of both agree Miles Jack a little bit overvalued. And undervalued for me, it's going to be the guys I mentioned, Devin Bush and
Mhm.
Patrick Queen still. I think Patrick Queen has a chance to be that next guy. I mean, look at Devin White. I mean, boom, linebacker 1, second year in the league. When that's not like an unprecedented thing to happen. So Patrick Queen, he had a lot of impact plays. He didn't play every snap. He even got benched at times. So there's upside there in my eyes. He went over 100 tackles, but you give him 130 tackles with these numbers he's got, and that's still a super good linebacker. And he was great this year. I don't remember exactly where he finished. I think it was top 24. I'm pretty confidently, but I don't have that right in front of me. I should. Sorry, guys.
No. Yes. And I agree. I think Patrick Queen, especially in Dynasty, I mean, this year, he was kind of a little bit all over the place. Like you said, he did miss some snaps here and there, whether it was getting benched or just being, getting those rookie growing pains as well. Right. So, a year where these guys had no off season, no training program, thing like that, or not a full training program as a rookie, it's harder to kind of be thrown right into the deep end and try to learn how to swim. And I think that was the case with Patrick Queen. I think this year he'll make a nice jump, and he'll be a good dynasty linebacker for a few more years for sure. And then undervalued guys. There's a ton. Like I think those LB2s on a lot of teams, guys like Dre Greenlaw, for example, on San Francisco, and like a Bobby Okereke or somebody, guys that are like you say, they're kind of those more boring linebackers, but at that point in the draft, that's kind of, you like that floor a little bit more, right? So as much as guys are going for Fred Warner or a Tremaine Edmonds, you can probably get like a Matt Milano or sorry, your face was or a Dre Greenlaw, somebody like that later on, right?
I got to do it. I'm about to go in. All right, don't get mad at me, but Fred Warner, the faithful mirage. All right, Fred Warner, every year he somehow gets this hype and he gets all this love, like he's so amazing, and he is a very good linebacker. Okay, but let's look. The reality of what he did this last year is he finished as a top 15 linebacker on the back of scoring 25% of his points for the season, week 16 and 17. Week 16 is finals week. Week 17 doesn't really exist. Okay. So this guy did nothing for you all season. I think before week 16, he was like linebacker like 38 or 42 or something. It was not pretty. And it's just the impact plays just have not been there in his career. I know that he had a lot of pass deflections that boosted him up. 2 years ago, he had 24. But if you look back, 17 this year, he's the main dog. 11 the year, his rookie season. I mean, that's 17 and 11. That doesn't even hit what Patrick Queen did this year on a leash. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So when I look at a guy like Fred Warner, who gets a lot of love from the faithful, and that's a little shade at you 49ers fans out there. All right, we got that Super Bowl from you now. All right, so he's a guy that I think is massively overvalued, like way overvalued, and because on a week-to-week basis, he hurts your team. He's out there as your linebacker 1, putting up 8s in IDP 1, 2, 3 scoring, where 8's hard to get. You gotta be pretty chill out there. You gotta be deep in coverage with your back to the quarterback to get 8 points. Okay, so there's my soapbox for Fred Warner, y'all. Check out the Ultimate IDP Index. I got a little blurb in there. If you guys, this is probably a good little segue point. Check out the IDP Army Patreon. I have not dropped the Ultimate IDP Index yet or the Blackwater files, but all that stuff's coming out 4/1. And he's still, to me, he is viewed as a top 25 dynasty asset. But that's dictated by the market. That's not honestly how I see Fred Warner. So when you get in there, you will see I do have this little write-up on him, kind of, laying out why I'm a little off Fred Warner compared to the general public. But I do understand there is value in Fred Warner in Dynasty as a piece. I don't want him in my team when the season starts. Like, that's not where he has value to me. He has value to me as a piece to move to somebody who believes in Fred Warner, the faithful, as they call themselves. So they're out there. I suggest that you sell them Fred Warner and if they believe in him where they say they do, you ought to be able to pull a high second, maybe a low first off of them. So if they're out there trying to talk all that talk, see if they'll back it up. That's my suggestion to you.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, Fred Warner, I think he's one of those guys who's a better NFL player than an IDP, right? And I think maybe that's where a little bit more of his dynasty value comes in just that he's a good player, so he's going to be around for a while.
Exactly. That's
right?
kind of how I view Minkah Fitzpatrick.
Yeah.
Minka's never going to have 100 tackles. It will literally never happen.
Right.
But Minkah Fitzpatrick will never not have a job until he says, I'm done.
Yep.
So you have to balance things like that. You know what I mean? So he does have top 24 defensive back value in my mind, Dynasty, because I know in 5 years, Minkah Fitzpatrick will still be an every week starter on my team.
Yeah.
So things like that definitely weigh into players. And that's kind of like I said, too, the market will continue to dictate that Fred Warner is valued highly, even though on a week-to-week basis, I don't think the value is there. Now, with Saleh gone, or I guess I'd say his name right, Saleh, maybe his role changes. Maybe the new defensive coordinator has him playing off the ball a little bit more and less, coverage stuff. Then we could see a new Fred Warner, and then I look like an idiot. But I'm just saying, based on what I've seen, people are gassing up Fred Warner a little too much, and they're not providing the context necessary. Yes, he finished top 15 this season, which is that in and of itself is not necessarily a big ooh, great. He did it on the back of scoring 25% of his points in the 2 weeks where you weren't playing fantasy or you were already in the championship, and he was 100% on your bench. You did not play Fred Warner in the championship week if you had him all season. I don't believe you. If you say you do, I want to see it. Send me some screenshots on Twitter, y'all. All right, so let's talk about, we've kind of been talking about a little bit, second-year linebackers. The big blow-up. We just saw it from Devin White, big blow-up season. So we got the premier guys from last year's class, Patrick Queen, Kenneth Murray, Jordan Brooks, in my opinion. I mean, these are all the first-round guys. Logan Wilson and Isaiah Simmons are kind of the guys that I think look at as the premier guys of this class. What do you think the floor and the ceiling looks like for these guys? I'll just quickly say, I don't think the floor, I think we've seen the floor for Simmons, Brooks, and Wilson, and for Murray, and for Queen. So, I mean, I think they all are on an upward trajectory. They're all very young. I loved Wilson in coverage this year because he actually came down with a couple interceptions on minimal snaps. Same with Isaiah Simmons. I don't know if you saw, but Kenneth Murray was playing with a torn labrum apparently most of the season, or a disconnect. Yeah, he had surgery right after the season. It was pretty bad apparently. So for him, he apparently was all season long. So I'm very excited for him, and I've kind of been trying to acquire him in Dynasty because I don't think a lot of people know that. They don't know that immediately after the season was done, he had surgery. If you follow him on YouTube, you can see that. I also have that in the Ultimate IDP Index if y'all want to check that out when it comes out. But to me, we've seen the floor for all these guys, and that's very exciting for me. But what are your thoughts about these guys? And who you've already said you want Isaiah Simmons. I'm kind of with you. He's the guy that I would really like to have, but I feel like people are kind of aware. But Patrick Queen and Kenneth Murray are kind of my top guys. But what do you think about the overall trajectory of these guys?
Yeah, so I think, like Simmons, we kind of touched on it, and I think you're right. To try to buy him at this point, for the most part, people are going to be we know that this is going to be a big breakout year for Simmons, so don't even bother. But yeah, guys like Logan Wilson, Kenneth Murray, Jordan Brooks, Kenneth Murray, we saw it, but Jordan Brooks and Logan Wilson specifically, we didn't get to see them every week. We didn't get to see them play major roles every week. Brooks played a significant amount of snaps, but he did so as kind of the LB3 in Seattle, right? There was still Bobby Wagner and KJ Wright playing ahead of him, but KJ Wright's hitting free agency now. We'll see what happens. Maybe Seattle brings them back, but assuming that they don't because they drafted Brooks in the first round, I think Brooks can kind of step in and play that KJ Wright role, rushing the passer, playing as kind of the run-stopping linebacker in Seattle, which is a good floor to have for him. We've seen KJ Wright be pretty IDP relevant for quite a few years now. Logan Wilson, I think, has probably more of a lower floor just because of what they like to do in Cincinnati is the kind of the thing that worries me. And I think Logan Wilson's the best of the bunch that they have there for the Bengals. So I think he has a good spot to kind of bounce up this year. But the way they've been kind of rotating their linebackers worries me a little bit. So obviously if you're not on the field, you're not going to get points, but it doesn't necessarily mean that he's not going to have a nice year. So I do like Logan Wilson, probably. So what do we got? 5 guys here as the fifth of the group, but with a chance, if he gets an every down role, obviously that can change. Kenneth Murray and Patrick Queen I have really close in my dynasty rankings. I have Murray actually one spot ahead of Patrick Queen. just because I like him. I think he's a good player. I think, and again, it's another one of those things. I think being a good NFL player will help you, sustain your value for longer in a dynasty league. So I have Kenneth Murray one spot ahead. Not to say that Patrick Queen's not a good player, but Kenneth Murray and Patrick Queen, both guys that I think we can still see improve in next year and up those totals a little bit more.
Excellent. Yeah, I that class was good. That many linebackers go in the first round. The trajectory of all those guys looks good. Any sleepers? I know everybody loves Jordan Phillips. Is that your sleeper?
Oh, Jacob Phillips.
Jacob Phillips. Whatever. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. There is a Jordan Phillips. There's a Jordan Phillips in the league as well. But Jacob Phillips. I mean, I like him. I don't know. I like to pump the tires of some of these guys, so I don't know how much of a sleeper they are at some, and I'm not the only one that does it. So the names out there, but again, we don't know for sure. It's kind of speculative, right? Like that he's going to step in and be that LB1.
It's the best time of the year, man. That's what we get to do. Just throw it all out there and see what comes back.
Exactly.
Speculate.
Yeah, but another one is Willie Gay Jr. too for the Chiefs. I mean, their linebackers were trash last year, and
tell me about it, bro. They've been trashed for like 3-4 years. Like it wasn't just last year.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, so they need somebody. They need a good linebacker, and I think Willie Gay can be that. He's a good coverage linebacker. I think if they keep him out there for all 3 downs, he's going to be a good producer for IDP. So we'll see, but.
All right. I love it. I love the Willie Gay pick. Hopefully Willie Gay, for me, the only play I remember of him this season is he had a massive tackle for loss on Christian McCaffrey. I just it was one of the few times McCaffrey was even on the field. It was one of the few times fucking Willie Gay was on the field, and he just flew across the field and he met McCaffrey in the backfield, and I was like, damn, I like that. And I don't think I saw him again the rest of the game. I was like, of course, but whatever.
Yeah, I know. They put any excuse to not put that guy on the field. It was crazy.
That's something I watch a lot too. Is I know sometimes it's about watching the whole game and guys who watch film and stuff. I'm not a great film expert or anything like that, but I watch the plays guys make on the players that make the plays. So for me, it's like when I see a guy tackle somebody for a tackle for loss, okay, that's great. But who is that running back? Is that Carlos Hyde or is that Alvin Kamara? And then I am like, okay, this guy can hang with an elite, so that there's relevance in that in my mind. So when I saw him get to Christian McCaffrey in the backfield, I don't imagine Christian McCaffrey takes many tackles for loss. You don't see that often for him. So when I see something like that, and then in my head, I go back to 2 years ago when the Panthers and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers were in London, and Devin White got put in a blender by Christian McCaffrey. You remember that play? Yeah. I mean, he was didn't know, he was spinning out of the universe. So you watch stuff like that, you're like, okay, this guy can hang with some special people. So I liked what I saw from him just in that one snap, just because I was like, oh, so.
Yeah, he's flashed, right? That's the thing. It's all small sample size stuff, but I think you like the flashes that you do see from him, and that's kind of what gives me hope for him as an every down linebacker, and obviously an IDP relevant linebacker for sure.
Yep. All right, let's speed it up here a little bit. Briefly, tell me what you know about or your top 5 rookie incoming linebackers, and then of those 5, who do you think has the highest upside, and then who most likely to bust?
Okay. Yeah. So I'm kind of going through the linebackers and pretty much all this rookie class. I'm going through a ton of them of the IDPs right now. So I have 4 guys for sure that are in my top 4 that are probably not leaving there. My 5th is, I got to watch a little bit more. So my 5th is Jabril Cox from LSU. My 4th I'm counting down, but my 4th is Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. This changed. He was my number 2 at one point, and then I watched a little bit more of him. He's a smaller linebacker. Not sure how much of an actual linebacker he might be in the NFL. He might play more of that Jeremy Chin role, which obviously is good, but it can also, he might not fit in the right scheme for that. So he's my number 4. Number 3, I have Nick Bolton from Missouri. Number 2 is Zazen Collins, UCLA, and number 1, I put Micah Parsons from Penn State. I think most people are aware of Micah Parsons by this point being the top linebacker in the class, and he's the guy I think has the highest upside just because he's such a good pass rusher as well. He could easily be the best edge rusher in this class too if he were to take on that role. He's that good at it. So Micah Parsons for me is the highest upside. Most likely to bust is the one that I worry about. I liked him a lot is Owusu Koromoa from Notre Dame, just because he's going to need to be in the right scheme, and he is a bit smaller, but he's a good coverage player, and he has a chance to succeed as well. It's not to say that he doesn't, but that would be my most likely to bust if I had to choose one.
Nice. Love those guys. Zazen Collins, he's the guy that I've kind of been catching my eye a little bit lately. I don't watch a lot of college football / any college football, really, just what I can kind of catch because I work on Saturdays usually.
Mm-hmm.
But he's the guy that when I have been watching or have been seeing and reading and looking at, he's the guy that I'm like, I'm probably not going to get Parsons just because in most of my leagues, I don't need a true linebacker one. I don't need to reach for what a true linebacker one because I've kind of set myself up this offseason by acquiring Joe Schobert, Blake Martinez, and Roquan Smith pretty much everywhere I can. That's kind of how I've been building my teams this year. So I am looking at Collins and I'm like, okay, like if I'm late second, early third, he's a guy that I'm assuming a lot of the good wide receivers. I mean, at that point, most of you're looking at a less than 50% hit rate. So I'm going to definitely be transitioning over to the defensive players and trying to get as many top guys as I can there. So last year that worked out for people that went Jeremy Chin. That worked out for people that went Antoine Winfield. People that had McKinney didn't work out quite as much, but that was an injury related. So that's jury's still out. Kyle Duggar did kind of let a lot of people down, me included. I'm interested to see what happens with him this year, but I'm concerned, to say the least. I'll be completely honest there. So thank you for sharing that with us. That's, we don't get a lot of rookie talk on here, but as the draft's getting closer, I'm going to bring it up a little bit more.
For sure.
All right, we're going to close out the show. We are just going to do our just for fun, way too early top 12 linebackers kind of going into this next season, or you could even call it dynasty. There's, whatever the parameters are, it doesn't really matter. These are just the top 12 linebackers that you want on your teams right now, moving into this next season. And then we'll just have, a brief discussion, kind of, throw stones at each other and then get out of here. So you want to take us off?
Yeah, sure. So are we talking like edge guys as well? It's TJ Watt.
I'm looking here, and if that's the truth, TJ Watt's my number 2. Let's just leave them out of this. Okay. Let's just do off ball, linebackers, and just because TJ Watt's probably the only one we'd have to talk about anyway. So I'm good with that. So Devin White is 1. Darius Leonard will be 1A for me. So 1 and 2 there. Number 3 is Roquan Smith. 4 is Blake Martinez for me. Number 5, actually, so Isaiah Simmons is 5 for me. So I said he was LB6 before, but he's actually LB5. Number 6 is Jalen Smith. Number 7, I'm going Devin Bush. Number 8, I am going Joe Schobert. Number 9 is Tremaine Edmonds, 10 Deion Jones, 11 Kenneth Murray, and 12 Patrick Queen. Kenneth Murray. Ooh, you got a lot of young blood up in there.
Yeah, I went dynasty.
Yeah, we are step for step, pretty close in the center there. I have Leonard at 1, White at 2, and then here we hit stride. We got Roquan and Blake Martinez in the same spot. I have Jalen Smith 6, Cunningham at 7. At 6. I have Patrick Queen at 8, Joe Schobert 9, Eric Kendricks at 10, Devin Bush at 11, and Tremaine Edmonds at 12. Just for reference point, I have Isaiah Simmons at 15 and Deion Jones at 16. So we're pretty close there, all within the same 16 for most of those guys. Kenneth Murray, where do I have him? He's probably a tinge too low. He's at my linebacker 26 right now, so I'm definitely going to have to make an adjustment on that.
Yeah. Eric Kendricks for me is LB 13, so pretty close.
There you go. Yeah. Well, I was going to say, I was going to start attacking you viciously, but it sounds like you're a pretty smart guy over here. So, what are your thoughts? So you have Simmons all the way up at 5. So you really are in.
I'm in. Yeah. It's, I know it's high. But there's going to be a new crop of players that come in that everybody's going to be high on in a year from now. So I'm going to grab this guy as soon as I can. I think like I said, it's speculative right now, but I think he's in for a starting role. I think when we saw him as a starter and as an every down player in those few games where he was that in Arizona last year, he was a great IDP. He was getting sacks, he was rushing the passer, he was making tackles, getting tackles for a loss as well. Made some nice plays doing that, showed good range. He's improving his coverage. He was obviously a top 10 pick in the NFL draft. Not to say that necessarily translates automatically, but it's one of those things that we've seen that draft capital carry over to dynasty rankings. And I think Isaiah Simmons has a chance to make that leap. And obviously I'm putting it as a pretty big leap. And maybe he doesn't finish his LB5, say, this season, but I think for long-term in dynasty purposes, I think you'd be happy with him as in that spot.
Yeah. I mean, he had 11 impact plays he didn't play 300, 400 snaps or so.
Yeah, I didn't play.
That's pretty incredible. Okay, so question for you on Simmons then, just kind of gauge where you're at. And I know I'm putting you on the spot, so I apologize. But if you were to trade him for, in terms of draft pick value, I'm looking right now at my Ultimate IDP index. I've kind of got him in that second plus area where if I was going to trade him, I would want to get back a second and then something else with it. I don't know if that would be looking like, a Deshaun Elliott, like a very deep sort of free safety kind of guy. That could look like, a 2023 fourth. But it's a second plus is kind of how I view him. But what are your thoughts? And he's a buy to me too right now. I'm with you. Like he's not in my top 12, but he's right outside. What kind of capital are you willing to give up to go get him?
Yeah, I think that's about right. Like I think you don't want to overpay for certain guys, but I've been trying to acquire him this offseason already in leagues where I don't have him and been unsuccessful. And then I've been trying to offer in that range of that second plus kind of tier. So I've even it's showing that I'm kind of maybe a little bit desperate to try and get him. But I was even willing to offer like a Henry Ruggs, for example, to try and get him. And you know what?
I don't hate that.
Kind of underutilized last year, but
straight across, or was that I'll throw in with your second?
That was going to be straight up.
I like that. I think that you would have come out on top there pretty easily, personally.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, wide receiver, obviously the more valuable position. And so,
but let's candidly, what is the absolute ceiling of Henry Ruggs?
That's the thing, right? Like he's an elite speed guy. I mean, maybe his absolute ceiling, and this is way out there, but Tyreek Hill, it comes to mind just because
1 in a million type of player. We already know that. Isaiah Simmons ceiling is much more within reach, and similar towards sort of points. And I think, like I said, much easier to get there. Sure. So I don't hate that. I know it's tough to do offense or defense, but I liked that as a point.
Yeah, it is. And yeah, that was kind of my thinking about it, why I wouldn't be too upset if I had to make that deal. But that's kind of where I'm at. I'm around that area where, I'm willing to give up a wide receiver prospect that hasn't, shown up like a Justin Jefferson or something like that, for example. But like a Henry Ruggs, I think is in a good space there, or a second and like a second or third tier prospect at safety, like you said, like a Deshaun Elliott or whoever.
Yeah. But that's kind of how when I look at player values, it's, I look at it like converting currency, cryptocurrency, whatever you want. When you go make a trade, it's easier for me when I have a conversion point. So instead of looking at a player and being like, Zach Cunningham is worth Jalen Reagor, I say Zach Cunningham is worth a second plus. And then I say, what offensive players are worth a second plus? And then I look at those guys where I'd be like, this is what I would send. And then I get a list of names. I'm like, hey, these are the 15 guys I can kind of target or look at to kind of move around if I want to do that offense to defense kind of trade. I use it. I look at it as a trade converter personally. I have that. I'm just keep plugging the Ultimate IDP index. Check the Patreon out. But in that, I mean, I've got 130 some odd guys in here, and every one of them I've got what I would do my estimated draft pick value on each one. And I have he's a second plus. Kenneth Murray's a second plus. I have Bobby Wagner as a third plus right now, just for context, because he's kind of more of a win now piece. Yeah. But long term value is probably not there. But I mean, for a third, for a win now, that's good. So just kind of give you guys some context for that. Let's see who's somebody that I have as like a fourth. Like I have like Christian Kirksey as a 4th right now, or Bradley Chubb I have as a 3rd plus. I think that's a value for him. I think he's probably worth a little more than that, but that's just to give you guys some points, of reference. So I like that Isaiah Simmons though for Ruggs. That's a good one. Devin Bush, I'm glad to see here that you are also a believer. You look back at what he did as a rookie. He had a ton of impact plays. I mean, he had 20, I believe, I'm looking at here, 23 impact plays, I believe, it was all said and done as a rookie. 22. He played right around the same amount of snaps as Patrick Queen did, who had 19 this year. So you can similar kind of trajectory, a little over 100 tackles, right around 100 tackles, but making big plays. And you like to see guys with multiple skill sets layered on top of the safe tackle floor. We know that, maybe the snaps weren't there, but we also know with certain teams, the excuse me, the Steelers and the Ravens kind of being poster children for this, they do kind of jerk the chain, shall we say, of their rookies. Look at Dobbins, look at Claypool, on offense, and then you look at Queen, look at Bush, on defense. So look at Highsmith, although he did have to come in later in the season at win Bud Dupree. So it's not unlike them to not fully unleash their rookies. So that's something I like. I know Devin Bush to start the season did not look like he was unleashed this last year, but that doesn't, to me, I'm still, like you said, I'm not concerned about Devin Bush. I love your confidence in him. I love that you have him that high in your rankings. And he came in at linebacker 11 for me. So nice. We're pretty much right there with each other.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, this has been fun. I don't really have anything else in my notes here. Anything you want to add or tell anybody about linebackers before we kind of plug away and plug out?
I mean, I think that's it, right? There's a lot of value at the position. One thing I've noticed, like you can get guys later. Sleeper, for example, has a terrible like kind of ADP list to pull from when you're doing your dynasty drafts. So go through, dig up like go really deep because there's guys hidden, buried there. Make a queue because you can find some really good value in sleeper drafts that people will forget about for sure. And then you'll draft them and everybody will be like, holy crap, why the hell did I just draft a piece of crap? And
more sleeper advice too, just real life helping people out. You find they're like little groupings too. Like you'll scroll past 100 names and there's nobody and then all of a sudden you'll see 3 or 4 guys. You're like, oh my gosh, like I can't believe I almost quit scrolling. And so you add them to your queue and then you just keep going. And the same thing happens. You'll get to a spurt where there'll be 3, 4, 5, 6 different defensive players that you're like, oh wow, like why are they all the way down here? So like Harrison Smith I shouldn't be saying this because he's so dirt cheap right now, but Harrison Smith is a perfect example. You can get him in like round 30 right now. And he's a guy that I think he's going to probably finish as a top 25 defensive back again this year. But anyway, it's an example of somebody that you have to scroll to find. All right, John, you want to tell us where to find your work and, before we get you out of here?
Sure. I'm on pff.com. I'm putting out a weekly IDP article every week. Obviously, that's why it's weekly. And this week, I'll be dropping my Dynasty IDP rankings. We have 300 players ranked. So it's coming up on the site this week, and I'll do a write-up on those rankings as well. I'm on Twitter at PFF_Macri, and I host a bi-weekly podcast called the Big Nickel IDP Podcast. So you can find me there talking mostly Dynasty as it's an off-season podcast. So
diggity. All right. Well, thanks for tuning in, IDP Army. Thanks again, John, for coming. Guys, gals, wherever you are, whoever you are, don't forget to go sign up for the Black Ops tier of the Patreon. You get exclusive early access to the IDP Army Blackwater files. It's going to be 100 plus different reports, documents. There's PDFs in there. Like I said, there's the buy-sell tool, tiered IDP rankings, trade values, exclusive videos, more stuff like that. That'll be dropping 4/1. And yeah, shout out to the IDP Army. Wouldn't be here without you guys. Appreciate you. Love you. And until next time.